The first time Hyunwoo saw the alien ships, he thought they looked like giant floating jellyfish. Their purple and black bodies pulsed with strange lights as they drifted through Earth's sky. He stood on the roof of his apartment building in Seoul, watching dozens of the creatures move slowly over the city. Other people had come up to look too. Everyone was quiet, staring up at something they had never seen before. "Are they really alive?" asked his neighbor, an old woman who lived next door. Hyunwoo did not answer. He could not take his eyes off the ships. They moved like living things, not like the metal spaceships he had seen in movies. These were different. These were wrong somehow. The first broadcast came 3 hours later. Every screen on Earth showed the same thing. A tall creature with 4 arms and skin like wet leather stood in what looked like a grand hall. Behind it, other creatures sat in chairs that seemed to be made from bone. The creature spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "We are the Vorthak," it said. The words came through in perfect human languages, translated by technology beyond human understanding. "We have found your world. We have found your species. You will provide us with excellent sport." Hyunwoo felt his blood turn cold. Sport. They were talking about humans like they were animals. The creature continued. "Your people will run. Some will hide. Some will fight. This pleases us. The hunt is always better when the prey struggles." The thing that might have been its mouth opened wider, showing rows of sharp teeth. "We begin tomorrow." The broadcast ended. For a moment, the world was silent. Then the screaming started. Hyunwoo ran down the stairs to his apartment. His wife Yoonji was standing by the window, still staring at the alien ships. She had been an admiral in the Earth Defense Force before retiring 2 years ago. If anyone would know what to do, it would be her. "How many ships?" she asked without turning around. "I counted 40 over Seoul alone," Hyunwoo said. "There must be hundreds around the world." Yoonji nodded slowly. "I've been watching them. They're not using engines like ours. Those ships are alive. Biological technology, not mechanical." She finally turned to look at him. Her face was calm, but he could see fear in her eyes. "This is not an invasion, Hyunwoo. This is something worse." The next morning, the hunt began. Tae-min was walking to school when the first hunting party landed in his neighborhood. He was only 16, worried about a math test he had not studied for. The world changed in less than 10 seconds. The alien ship touched down in the middle of the street like a living building. Parts of it opened up and creatures poured out. They moved on 6 legs, fast and smooth like giant spiders. Each one carried weapons that looked like they had been grown instead of built. Taemin's first thought was to run home. His second thought was that he needed to warn his family. He turned toward his house and saw his mother standing in the doorway calling his name. Behind her, his little sister peeked out, curious about the noise. "Get inside," Taemin shouted, running toward them. He was still 50 meters away when the energy beam hit his mother. She simply disappeared, turned into glowing particles that scattered in the wind. His sister screamed and ran back into the house. More beams fired and more people vanished. The aliens were not killing humans quickly. They were playing with them, enjoying the fear. Tae-min dove behind a car as another beam passed over his head. Around him, his neighbors were running in all directions. Some tried to hide in buildings. Others grabbed whatever they could find to use as weapons. Nothing worked. The alien weapons turned everything into light and air. One of the 6-legged creatures walked slowly toward the car where Tae-min was hiding. It made clicking sounds that might have been laughter. Tae-min closed his eyes and waited to die. The beam never came. Instead, he heard an explosion and angry alien screams. When he opened his eyes, he saw Yoonji standing on a rooftop with some kind of military weapon. She fired again and another alien fell. "Move!" she shouted at Tae-min. "They will bring more." Tae-min ran. He did not stop running until he reached the underground subway tunnels where other survivors were hiding. He never saw his house again. He never saw his sister again. The war lasted 3 weeks. Earth's armies fought hard, but their weapons barely scratched the alien bioships. Nuclear missiles were absorbed and turned into fuel. Fighter jets were caught by living nets that the ships shot out like spider webs. Tank shells bounced off skin that healed itself in seconds. The Vorthak did not want to destroy Earth's military. They wanted to hunt it. They let human soldiers think they had chances to win, then crushed them slowly. They recorded everything and broadcast it to other parts of their empire as entertainment. Hyunwoo watched the final battle from a hidden bunker outside Seoul. The last Earth Defense Force fleet made one desperate, Attack on the largest alien ship. 50 fighters and bombers dove toward the creature, firing everything they had. The alien ship opened like a flower. Tentacles reached out and grabbed the human aircraft one by one. The pilots were pulled inside alive. Hyunwoo could hear them screaming over the radio until the signals cut off. "It's over," Yoonji said quietly. Around them, other survivors wept or stared at nothing. "The governments are gone. The armies are gone. We're on our own now." But even as she spoke, Hyunwoo saw something in her eyes that was not defeat. It was anger. It was the look of someone who was already planning to fight back. "What do we do now?" asked Taemin. The boy had not spoken much since losing his family, but his voice was steady. Yoonji looked around at the 30 people crowded in the bunker. They were teachers, workers, students, old people, children. None of them were soldiers. All of them had lost everything. "Now we learn," she said. "We watch them. We study them. We find out how they think, how they hunt, how they live." She stood up and walked to a map on the wall. "They think we're just animals. They think this hunt is already over." She turned back to face the group. "We're going to prove them wrong." Outside the bunker, alien ships drifted through the sky like hunting birds. The Vorthak had added Earth to their collection of conquered worlds. Another species had fallen to their perfect hunting skills. Another victory for the galaxy's greatest predators. They had no idea that their newest prey was already planning to bite back. 5 years had passed since the Vorthak came to Earth. Hyunwoo barely remembered what the sun looked like anymore. He spent most of his time in tunnels, caves, and hidden rooms built deep underground. The surface world belonged to the hunters now. He crept through the abandoned subway tunnel, moving as quietly as possible. Behind him, 20 other humans followed in single file. They had learned to walk without making sound, to breathe without being heard, to live like ghosts in their own world. The tunnel opened into a large chamber that had once been a subway station. Now it was home to nearly 200 survivors. Families huddled around small fires that gave barely any light. Children played quiet games with toys made from scraps. Everyone spoke in whispers. "Any word from the Seoul North group?" Hyunwoo asked So-young as he sat down beside her workbench. So-young looked up from the alien device she was taking apart. Her hands were steady, but her eyes were tired. She had been studying captured Vorthak technology for 3 years, trying to understand how it worked. Jinho made contact yesterday. They're still alive, but barely. The hunters found 2 of their safe houses last week. Hyunwoo nodded. It was the same story everywhere. The Vorthak were patient hunters. They did not try to find every human at once. Instead, they waited and watched, letting the survivors think they were safe. Then they would strike, taking a few people at a time. It was a game to them. "What about that?" Hyunwoo pointed to the alien device on So-young's table. "It's some kind of communication tool," she said. "But it's not like our radios. This thing is alive. It grows connections to other devices instead of sending signals." She picked up a small piece that looked like a purple worm. "See this? It was trying to connect to the main Vorthak network when I cut it out. I think it was calling for help." Hyunwoo felt a chill. "Calling for help how?" "I'm not sure yet. But Hyunwoo, I think these devices are all connected. Every tool, every weapon, every part of their ships. They're like body parts of one giant creature." So-young set the piece down carefully. "If I'm right, then everything they have can talk to everything else." Before Hyunwoo could answer, Nari came running into the chamber. The young woman handled communications between different survivor groups, using old cables and hidden radio stations. Her face was excited and scared at the same time. "Hyunwoo, you need to hear this." She led him to her radio setup in a corner of the station. The equipment was old and patched together, but it worked. "I picked up a signal. Not from Earth, from space." She flipped a switch and static filled the air. Then through the noise came a voice speaking in words that sounded almost human, but not quite. "This is Kalari Survival Group 7, calling any resistance forces. We are still alive. The Vorthak hunting fleets think they killed us all, but small groups escaped. We have information about their hunting patterns. Please respond if you receive this message." Hyunwoo stared at the radio. "Kalari, but they destroyed the Kalari 5 years ago." "We watched it happen." Nari smiled for the first time in months. "They lied. Or the Vorthak lied. The Kalari are still out there and they want to talk." It took 3 days to establish proper contact with the Kalari survivors. The blue-skinned aliens had been hiding on a dead moon in their home system, living in caves much like the humans on Earth. Their leader, a female named Kellery, spoke broken English learned from intercepted human broadcasts. "Vorthak think hunt finished," Kellery said through the crackling radio connection. "They take trophies, leave world, never check if all prey dead." Big mistake. Many species still alive, hiding, waiting. Yunji leaned closer to the microphone. She had become the unofficial leader of their group, using her military training to keep them organized. "How many species? How many survivors?" "Hard to know. Maybe 20 species still have hidden groups. Maybe more. Quailith still alive on Waterworld. Rock people Granix hiding in asteroid belt. Flying Zephyri living in gas giant clouds." Kellery paused. "All scared. All alone. Until now." Hyunwoo felt something he had not felt since the invasion started. Hope. "We want to work together. All of us against the Vorthak." Good. Kellery hoped human survivors would say this. Humans fought differently than other species. Made Vorthak work harder for victory. Other species noticed. Over the following weeks, Nari worked to contact other survivor groups throughout the galaxy. Each conversation brought new information about the Vorthak and their hunting methods. The six-legged creatures that had attacked Taemin's neighborhood were called Reapers, used for ground hunting. The larger four-armed aliens were the actual Vorthak, who preferred to hunt from their bioships. The survivors learned that Vorthak society was built entirely around hunting. Young Vorthak proved themselves by taking trophies from dangerous prey. Adult Vorthak gained status by organizing successful hunts. Elder Vorthak led the empire from hunting lodges where they displayed collections of bones and preserved body parts. From every species they had conquered, they see everything as either predator or prey, explained Kellery during one conversation. No middle ground. No peace, no mercy. Only hunt. Taemin, now 21 and one of their best scouts, had been listening to every conversation with the aliens. "What about working together?" he asked. "Do they ever cooperate?" "Only to hunt bigger prey. Vorthak sometimes join forces when facing dangerous species, but always temporary. When hunt finished, they go back to competing with each other." So Young looked up from her latest project, a partially rebuilt Vorthak weapon. That explains why their technology is so unified. Everything connects because they need to coordinate during group hunts. "But if everything connects, then everything has weaknesses," Yunji finished. "Keep working on that device, So Young. I want to know everything about how their systems communicate." Jinho's voice came through Nari's radio the next morning. The former Special Forces soldier sounded excited. "We captured one of their scouts last night. A Reaper that was hunting alone. Taemin's trap idea worked perfectly. Is it alive?" Hyunwoo asked. "Barely. But it's talking, sort of. The creature seems confused that we didn't kill it immediately. It keeps asking why we're not eating it." Jinho paused. "Hyunwoo, I think these things have never been captured before. They don't know what to do." Yunji grabbed the microphone. "Ask it about their hunting patterns. When do they rest? How do they choose targets? How many hunters work together? Already started. This thing is scared. Really scared. It keeps saying that prey isn't supposed to capture predators, that it goes against the natural order." Jinho's voice got quieter. "I think we just did something that has never happened in Vorthak history." That night, Hyunwoo couldn't sleep. He walked through the survivor camp, looking at the faces of people who had lost everything but kept fighting. Children who had grown up in caves. Adults who had forgotten what normal life felt like. Old people who might never see the surface world again, but now they had allies. Species from across the galaxy, who had also lost their homes but refused to give up. Together, they were starting to learn things about the Vorthak that the hunters might not even know about themselves. So Young called him over to her workbench. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a diagram she had drawn. "I've been studying the communication patterns and captured Vorthak devices. They all connect to something bigger, something central, like a brain. Exactly like a brain. I think every Vorthak ship is connected to every other ship. They share information instantly across the galaxy." She looked up at him with gleaming eyes. "But if they're all connected, then we might be able to affect all of them at once." "How?" "I'm working on it." "But Hyunwoo, what if we could turn their own technology against them? What if the predators suddenly couldn't trust their own tools?" Hyunwoo smiled. For the first time in 5 years, he felt like they might actually have a chance. Woojin stared at the wall covered in papers, photos, and drawings. For 8 months, he had been tracking every Vorthak hunting party that came to Earth. He marked when they arrived, where they went, how long they stayed, and what they did. Slowly, A pattern was emerging. "They're predictable," he said to Haiwan as she entered the hidden room. "Look at this." He pointed to a timeline drawn across the wall. "Every hunting party follows the same schedule. They land at dawn, hunt until midday, rest for 4 hours, then hunt again until sunset." Haiwan set down her backpack and pulled out a small device that looked like a purple egg. "I got close enough to their ship to plant a listening device. Took me 6 hours of crawling through sewage pipes, but I heard them talking." "What language?" "Their own, but the device So Young gave me translated most of it." Haiwan pulled out a notebook. "They were complaining, Wu Jin. Actually complaining about how long this hunt is taking. One of them said Earth humans are stubborn prey that refuse to die properly." Wu Jin turned from his charts. "What else?" "They're getting bored. The hunt is supposed to be exciting, but we keep hiding instead of running in panic. They want to move on to a new hunting ground, but their leader won't let them leave until they've taken enough trophies." This was important news. Wu Jin had suspected that the Vorthak were getting frustrated, but hearing it confirmed changed everything. "How many trophies do they need?" 1,000 human skulls for this sector. They have about 300 so far." Wu Jin did quick math in his head. At their current rate, the Vorthak would need 2 more years to finish hunting Earth. 2 years was enough time to prepare something special for them. Donghyun came up from the lower levels carrying a metal box that hummed with electricity. The former marine biologist had been dissecting every piece of Vorthak technology they could capture. His latest project was understanding how their bioships stayed alive. "I figured out how they eat," Donghyun announced. "The ships don't just use fuel like our vehicles. They consume organic matter and convert it into energy. Specifically, they eat fear." "What do you mean?" Haiwan asked. "The bioships have sensors that detect stress hormones, panic responses, terror. When prey animals are afraid, they release chemicals into the air and water. The ships absorb these chemicals and use them for food." Donghyun opened his box and showed them a small jellyfish-like creature. "This is a feeding organ I cut out of a damaged ship. Watch what happens when I introduce synthetic fear hormones." He dropped a few drops of liquid onto the creature. It immediately began glowing and pulsing faster. Its tentacles reached out hungrily, searching for more. "They literally feed on fear," Donghyun said. "That's why they don't just kill everyone quickly. Scared prey produces more food than dead prey." Wu Jin felt pieces clicking together in his mind. "So if we could make them afraid instead?" "Their own ships might try to eat them," Donghyun finished. "But that's not the only weakness I found. Look at this." He pulled out another sample, this one looking like a piece of purple coral. "This is from their communication system. It's incredibly advanced, but it has one major flaw. It can't tell the difference between real Vorthak biosignatures and artificial ones." Meaning if we can fake their biological signals, we might be able to send false information through their network. Make them think things that aren't true. That evening, Yunji called a meeting of all the resistance cell leaders. They gathered in the old subway station, their faces lit by the glow of captured alien devices. Representatives from 12 different hideouts were present, along with radio connections to survivor groups around the world. "We've learned enough," Yunji announced. "It's time to stop just surviving and start fighting back." Taemin raised his hand. At 22, he had become an expert at moving unseen through Vorthak-controlled territory. "What's the plan?" Ayunji walked to a large table where So Young had spread out diagrams of Vorthak bioships. "We're going to do something the Vorthak have never experienced. We're going to hunt them." Murmurs of excitement and fear rippled through the crowd. For 7 years, humans had been the prey. The idea of reversing roles seemed impossible. "Here's what we know," Yunji continued. "They follow predictable patterns. They're getting bored and frustrated. Their ships eat fear but can be fooled by artificial biosignals. And most importantly, they've never faced organized resistance from their prey." So Young stood up. "I've been working with Kalari scientists through our radio link. Together, we've developed something new." She held up a device that looked like a combination of human electronics and alien biology. "This can mimic Vorthak communication signals. We can send false information directly into their network." "What kind of false information?" asked Jinho through the radio. "Fake distress calls, false reports of large prey gatherings, artificial fear signals that will draw them to specific locations." So Young smiled. "We're going to make them think their prey is where we want them to be." Wu Jin stepped forward with his charts. I've identified 17 hunting parties that operate in our region. Each one follows the same routine. If we can coordinate attacks on all 17 at the same time, we can capture their ships before they can warn the others. Capture the ships? Taemin asked. How? Donghyun opened another container. Inside was a collection of small worm-like creatures. Vorthak bioships have immune systems, but they're designed to fight diseases, not parasites that mimic their own biology. These are modified ship-feeding organs that will attach to their hulls and start eating from the inside. Haiwan nodded slowly. I can get close enough to plant them. I've been studying their patrol routes for months. But we need more than just capturing ships, Yunji said. We need to send a message to every Vorthak in the galaxy. We need to show them that their prey has teeth. Nari spoke up from her radio station. The Kalari have been talking to other survivor groups. There are resistant cells ready to act on 43 different worlds. If we coordinate our attacks with theirs, the Vorthak will suddenly find themselves under attack everywhere at once, Yunji finished. For the first time in their history, the hunters will become the hunted. Over the next month, preparations began in earnest. Woojin's team studied hunting party schedules down to the minute. Haiwan practiced infiltration techniques using captured alien equipment. Donghyun bred hundreds of ship parasites in hidden laboratories. So-young worked day and night to perfect the false communication devices. But the most important work was psychological. The human survivors had to stop thinking like prey and start thinking like predators. It meant overcoming 7 years of hiding, running, and fear. It meant believing they could actually win. Taemin found himself thinking about his family more often as the day of the attack approached. His mother, who had vanished in a beam of light. His sister, who had disappeared into their house and never come out. For 7 years he had run from the creatures that took them. Soon he would finally have a chance to run toward them instead. Are you ready for this? Hyun Woo asked him one evening as they checked equipment. Taemin looked around at the cave where they had lived like animals for so long. At the people who had lost everything but refused to give up. At the alien devices they had learned to use better than their creators. I've been ready for 7 years, he said. The attack was scheduled for dawn in 3 days. Across the galaxy, other resistance groups were making their final preparations. The Vorthak had no idea that their scattered prey had learned to communicate with each other. They had no idea that their perfect hunting methods had been studied and decoded. They had no idea that the galaxy's greatest predators were about to discover what it felt like to be prey. In the depths of Earth's underground cities, humans sharpened captured alien weapons and practiced moving like hunters instead of hiding like victims. After 7 years of being afraid, they were finally ready to make someone else afraid for a change. The attack began at exactly 6:47 a.m., just as the Vorthak hunting parties were preparing for their morning hunts. Minho watched from the captured bioship's control center as 17 simultaneous strikes launched across Earth. Through the ship's living communication system, he could see and hear everything happening at once. He-1 moved like a shadow through the Vorthak ship docked in what used to be Tokyo Bay. The alien hunters were sleeping in their rest chambers, confident that no prey would dare approach their vessel. They were wrong. She planted Donghyun's bioparasites along the ship's hull, small creatures that immediately began burrowing into the living metal. Parasites deployed, she whispered into her communicator. The ship's immune system hasn't noticed them yet. 3 kilometers away, Taemin led his team in a direct assault on a Vorthak ground base. The 6-legged reapers that had terrorized his neighborhood 7 years ago were preparing their hunting equipment when humans burst through their defenses from 6 different directions. But these weren't the scared civilians the reapers were used to hunting. These humans moved with military precision, using captured Vorthak weapons that they had learned to operate better than their makers. The first reaper fell before it could raise an alarm. The second managed to fire 1 shot before Taemin's energy beam turned it into scattered particles. The third and fourth tried to call for help, but their communication devices had been jammed by So-Young's interference signals. Base secured, Taemin reported. 12 reapers eliminated, no human casualties. Across the planet, similar reports came in from every attack team. The Vorthak had become comfortable in their role as hunters. They had forgotten to watch for danger to themselves. 7 years of easy hunting had made them soft and careless. But the real surprise came when the captured bioship started responding to human commands. Minho had been the best pilot in the old Earth Defense Force, but he had never flown anything like this. The ship was alive, responding to his thoughts as much as his physical controls. When he wanted to turn left, the ship sensed his intention and moved before he touched any controls. "This is incredible," he called to his crew. "The ship's biological systems are adapting to human neural patterns. It's learning to work with us," Yejin monitored communications from the central command post hidden beneath Seoul. Her job was to coordinate all 17 strike teams and maintain contact with resistance groups on other worlds. The alien communication network that the Vorthak used to coordinate their hunts was now being used against them. "Kalari strike teams report success on Proxima Station," she announced. "Quillith forces have taken control of 3 hunting ships in the Vega system. Granix resistance has destroyed a Vorthak breeding facility in the asteroid belt." Through the captured communication network, the galaxy was watching as prey animals everywhere turned on their predators at the same moment. The Vorthak had built a perfect system for hunting scattered, frightened species. They had never imagined that system being used to coordinate attacks against them. Kiwu worked frantically at his engineering station, converting captured Vorthak biotechnology into weapons that could be used by humans. The aliens had created living tools that grew and adapted to their users' needs. But those same tools could be convinced to serve new masters if approached correctly. "I figured out how to reprogram their targeting systems," he announced. "Instead of identifying humans as prey, the weapons now recognize Vorthak biosignatures as threats. Their own guns are turning against them." The battle for Earth's orbital hunting lodge was the hardest fight of the day. The massive space station served as headquarters for all Vorthak operations in the solar system. It was heavily defended and filled with the galaxy's most experienced hunters, but it was also symbolic. If humans could capture the lodge where their oppressors planned their hunts, they would send a message heard across the galaxy. Hyunwoo led the assault team through the station's bio-corridors. The walls pulsed with alien heartbeats, and the air tasted of chemicals he couldn't identify. Behind him, 30 humans carried weapons they had never dreamed of using just days before. Energy rifles that fired beams of concentrated starlight, sonic disruptors that could shatter bone with sound waves, gravity bombs that twisted space itself into a weapon. The first group of Vorthak hunters they encountered seemed more confused than afraid. These tall, four-armed aliens had spent their entire lives as unchallenged predators. The concept of being hunted was completely foreign to them. "Impossible," one of them said in its grinding voice. "Prey does not attack. Prey runs or hides." "We're not your prey anymore," Hyunwoo replied and fired. The battle was short but brutal. The Vorthak were individually stronger and better armed than humans, but they had no experience fighting opponents who refused to run. Their hunting tactics were perfect for chasing frightened animals, but useless against organized military assault. Within 2 hours, the orbital lodge was under human control. Hyunwoo stood in the station's central chamber, surrounded by displays showing Vorthak hunting operations throughout the galaxy. Trophy cases lined the walls, filled with bones and preserved remains from hundreds of extinct species. At the center of the room sat a throne made from the skull of some massive creature. "Yejin, this is Hyunwoo. The lodge is ours," confirmed. "All 17 Earth targets have been secured. Total Vorthak casualties over 800. Human casualties 12 wounded, 2 dead. For the first time in 7 years, humans had fought the Vorthak and won. But the real victory was just beginning." So Young's voice came through the communication system. "I'm accessing the lodge's main database. Hyunwoo, you need to see this. The Vorthak don't just hunt for sport or food. They hunt because their entire civilization depends on it." Data streamed across the captured displays. The Vorthak Empire wasn't just a collection of hunters. It was a carefully constructed society where status, resources, and survival all depended on successful predation. Young Vorthak who couldn't hunt were left to die. Leaders who failed to organize successful hunts were overthrown and eaten by their rivals. The entire economy was based on processing prey species into useful materials. "They're not evil," So Young continued. "They're trapped. Their whole species has evolved to depend on hunting other intelligent beings. If they stop hunting, their civilization collapses. Then we'll help it collapse," Yunji said firmly. Her voice came from the main communication channel, broadcast to every resistance cell on Earth and every allied group throughout the galaxy. "Today we proved that the Vorthak can be beaten. Tomorrow we start hunting them." Reports continued to pour in from across the galaxy. On 43 different worlds, resistance groups had struck at the same moment. Vorthak hunting fleets found themselves under attack by species they thought were extinct. Communication networks that had carried hunting orders for thousands of years now carried messages of rebellion and revenge. But the most important change was psychological. For the first time in Vorthak history, the hunters were afraid. Their bioships registered the fear hormones of their own crews and began behaving erratically. Some ships tried to consume their own operators. Others simply shut down, refusing to function while their occupants radiated terror. Taemin stood on the observation deck of the captured lodge, looking down at Earth through the transparent biological walls. The planet looked the same as it had 7 years ago, but everything had changed. Humans were no longer hiding in caves and tunnels. They were standing on a Vorthak command station, using alien technology to coordinate a galaxy-wide resistance movement. "What happens now?" he asked Hyunwoo. "Now we finish what they started," Hyunwoo replied. "They wanted to hunt every species in the galaxy. Instead, they're going to learn what it feels like when every species in the galaxy hunts them." Through the communication network, they could hear Vorthak distress calls from across their empire. Hunting parties that had expected easy prey were being systematically eliminated. Ships that had terrorized peaceful worlds for centuries were falling to coordinated attacks by their former victims. The galaxy's greatest predators were discovering that their prey had finally learned to bite back, and the bite was much worse than they had ever imagined. 6 months after the Great Reversal began, Subin stood before the newly formed Galactic Liberation Council, in what had once been the Vorthak Empire's greatest hunting lodge. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive chamber, their voices creating a symphony of languages that translation devices struggled to keep up with. The Vorthak throne at the center of the room had been removed. In its place sat a simple circular table where former prey species planned the future of the galaxy. It was a powerful symbol of how completely the situation had changed. "The last Vorthak fleet has surrendered," Subin announced to the assembly. Around her, beings from across the galaxy cheered in voices ranging from musical chirps to thunderous roars. After 3,000 years of terror, the hunting is finally over. But ending the Vorthak Empire had been the easy part. The hunters' entire civilization had collapsed within weeks once their victims started fighting back. Ships that fed on fear became useless when their crews were too terrified to function. Communication networks designed to coordinate hunts became tools for spreading panic instead. Weapons that required confident predators to operate stopped working when their users lost faith in their dominance. The hard part was deciding what to do with the defeated hunters. Jae-sung stood up from his seat at the planning table. The military strategist had spent months developing occupation plans for former Vorthak territory. Most of their worlds have surrendered without fighting. Their entire society was built around hunting, and without prey to hunt, they don't know how to function. "Some of our people want revenge," said Kellery, speaking for the Kalari survivors. "The Vorthak took our worlds, killed our families, hunted us like animals. Justice demands that we do the same to them." Murmurs of agreement came from several species around the room. The desire for revenge was understandable. Every being present had lost someone to Vorthak hunting parties. The urge to turn the tables completely and make the hunters into prey was strong. But Taemin, now 25 and serving as Earth's representative, had a different idea. "Revenge won't bring back the dead," he said quietly. "And if we become hunters ourselves, how are we better than they were?" "What do you suggest?" asked a Quillith representative, their amphibian features showing skepticism. Young Mi, who had been working with captured Vorthak biotechnology, stood up from her research station. "I've been studying their biology and psychology for months. The Vorthak aren't evil by choice. Their entire species evolved to be predators. Their brains are literally wired to see other beings as either threats or prey. They can't help it." "That doesn't excuse what they did," a Granix delegate rumbled, their rocky voice echoing through the chamber. "No, it doesn't," Young Mi agreed. "But it does suggest a solution. What if we could change how they think?" The room fell silent. The idea of modifying an entire species was enormous and controversial. "Explain," Subin said. Young Mi activated a holographic display showing Vorthak brain scans. Their neural pathways are incredibly specialized for hunting behavior. But biological systems can be retrained. Instead of hunting prey, we could teach them to hunt problems. Instead of tracking victims, they could track solutions. Hyunwoo, now 52 and showing gray in his hair, spoke from his position as overall resistance coordinator. "What kind of problems?" "Environmental restoration. young Me said, bringing up images of damaged worlds throughout the galaxy. The Vorthak hunting fleets left destroyed ecosystems on hundreds of planets. Who better to track down environmental threats than beings whose entire nature is to hunt? The idea was radical, but it made sense. The Vorthak had incredible skills at tracking, planning, and coordinating complex operations. Those same skills could be used to restore the worlds they had damaged instead of destroying new ones. They would resist, pointed out as a Fury representative, their energy-based form flickering with concern. Some would, Taman admitted, but we've captured thousands of Vorthak over the past months. Many of them are young, barely more than children. If we can show them a different way to live, they might choose it. Yunji, now serving as head of the new Galactic Security Forces, had been quiet during the debate. Finally, she spoke. I've interviewed many captured Vorthak. You know what surprised me most? How miserable they are. Their entire society is based on competition and dominance. They live in constant fear of being overthrown by rivals. They can never relax, never feel safe, never enjoy simple pleasures. You're suggesting we're doing them a favor? Asked the Kalari representative. I'm suggesting we're offering them freedom, Yunji replied. Freedom from a society that forced them to be monsters. The debate continued for hours. Some species wanted complete destruction of the Vorthak. Others suggested exile to a distant galaxy. A few proposed keeping them as slaves or prisoners. But slowly support grew for the rehabilitation plan. It wouldn't be easy and it wouldn't be quick. Changing an entire species' way of thinking would take generations. But it offered something that simple revenge could not. A chance for real peace. The vote was close, but the rehabilitation plan passed. The former Vorthak hunting lodges would be converted into research stations and ecological restoration centers. Captured bioships would be modified to support environmental work instead of hunting. Young Vorthak would be raised with new values, learning to see other species as partners instead of prey. The implementation began immediately. On the former Vorthak homeworld, now renamed New Harmony, the first mixed species research team started working together. Human scientists worked alongside reformed Vorthak to develop new biotechnology for environmental restoration. Kalari engineers collaborated with former hunters to design living ships that could heal damaged atmospheres. Taman found himself assigned as liaison to a young Vorthak named Vorthak. The alien was barely adult by his species standards, captured during one of the last hunting raids on Earth. Unlike older Vorthak had not yet become completely rigid in his thinking. I do not understand, Vorthak said during one of their sessions. They were working together to track pollution sources in a contaminated river system. Why do you help me learn new hunting methods? I am your enemy. You were never my enemy, Taman replied. You were just taught to think like one. Now you're learning to think like a friend. Vorthak considered this. His forearms moved nervously as he processed concepts that had no equivalent in traditional Vorthak thinking. Friend, this means ally in hunting? It means ally in everything. Hunting problems, solving puzzles, building homes, raising children, celebrating success. Taman pointed to the data they had collected about river contamination. Look at what we found today. Working together, we tracked the pollution to its source faster than either of us could have alone. Together is better than alone? Much better. It would take time, but changes were happening across the galaxy. Former hunting ships now carried mixed crews on ecological missions. Ex-predators learned to use their tracking skills to find rare medical plants or locate missing persons. The same biological networks that had once coordinated galaxy-wide hunts now shared research data and restoration progress. 5 years later, Taman stood on the observation deck of a bioship floating in Earth's orbit. Through the living walls, he could see the planet below. Cities were being rebuilt. Forests were growing back. Children who had never known the terror of hiding in caves played in parks under open skies. Beside him, Vorthak worked at a biological console, monitoring the health of restored coral reefs in the Pacific Ocean. The young Vorthak had become one of the galaxy's best environmental trackers, using his hunting instincts to find and eliminate threats to ecosystem stability. The reef systems are responding well, Vorthak reported. Fish populations have increased by 30% since our last intervention. Good work, Taman said. Your people would be proud of you. My people? Vorthak looked confused for a moment, then smiled. It was an expression that would have been impossible for a traditional Vorthak hunter. Yes, all our people, human Vorthak Kalari Quilith. We are all one people now. Through the ship's communication system, they received updates from restoration projects throughout the galaxy. Former hunting grounds were becoming nature preserves. Dead worlds were blooming with new life. Species that had hidden in caves and asteroids for decades were returning to their home planets. The galaxy's greatest predators had learned to become its greatest protectors. The hunt would continue, but now they hunted for solutions instead of victims, tracked hope instead of fear, and captured dreams instead of trophies. Looking out at the stars, Taman thought about his mother and sister, lost so many years ago to Vorthak hunting beams. They would never come back, but their deaths had not been meaningless. They had led to this moment when former enemies worked together to heal the wounds they had once inflicted. The hunt was over. The healing had begun, and for the first time in millennia, every species in the galaxy could look up at the stars without fear.